Zimbabwe. Those of you who have watched my long-form travel expedition shows, it was a 6-week trip that I undertook in April, May 2025, and those travel shows are on my alternative channel, it's the ASPW Experience channel. The link is in the description. And during that expedition, I enjoyed one of the most rewarding, memorable African wildlife experiences of my life as part of that series. This video now is actually about, because I know a lot of you who've watched that will be thinking to yourself, well, could I do that? Could I do a self-drive trip or even a safari in Zimbabwe? The reason why Zimbabwe is so special is, for me personally, it was my very first experience of Africa. I was 6 years old, and as a little English boy, went over on a mail ship and arrived, and it was the start of my life of about 38 years in total, living in Southern Africa. And we went, my parents introduced me to wildlife, to what was then Rhodesia. It impacted the whole family so much so that my late father, in his office, he had a rather lovely billboard. You can see it in the frame here. And I have that same board in my studio here in my home in Perth. There's a connection, there's a family connection with that part of the world. This final expedition was so successful mainly because we teamed up with Graham Sharp of 16 Degrees South. And the reason why I give him so much credit is that you can't, if you want to do something like this, you can't do it on Google. You just can't. And I asked Graham that very question. Why can't I just use the internet to find out about and set up a shoot in Zimbabwe? I started, and I know the country quite well, and I started that process and realized that I wasn't getting anywhere. All I was getting were the websites from those Zimbabwean safari companies that were investing the most in being on the front page of Google. They were not there because they were going to deliver for me the kind of experience I wanted. And that's why I brought in Graham Sharp. And I have to tell you now, he made a massive, monumental difference to our expedition in Africa.
Yeah, I think with Zimbabwe and some of the complexities around the economy, lack of frequent knowledge in terms of where to go, how to go, and how you connect the various attractions in the north and the south. I think it is good to have someone contact someone like myself who's done these trips many times, who's grown up in the area, and depending on what I understand about your needs and your requirements, then it's easy to sort of match an itinerary depending on how adventurous people are, how self-contained, how experienced they are. But there are parts of Zim that if you get into trouble, it's unlikely someone's going to find you for a while, or you're unlikely to find spares or spare tires. So it's good to know what you want to do.
If somebody, a natural thing for people to do would be, oh, I'll go onto Google and look at TripAdvisor and try and plan my trip.
Doesn't work.
Okay, tell me about that.
Yeah, I think the essence of Google is it's sort of user feedback. So the more people who use it, the more accurate it gets. But a lot of these areas, it's left to the algorithm or the computer to try and figure out from old, dilapidated routing information that's public knowledge, but that's 20 years old. Even Tracks for Africa, in the last 3 or 4 years, we've done a lot of work with them to try and update a very overland orientated software program. But even that has its flaws. So I think it's just we as a society trust Google Maps and Waze and all these platforms like it's gospel. And Zimbabwe is a place where, I mean, we've seen it in this campsite in the last 2 days. There's people arriving here at 8 o'clock at night, haven't booked in. And if they'd had a problem on the road, no one knows if they're coming or going. So do not trust the likes of Google in Zimbabwe. You got to you've got to talk to someone who knows the seasonality, how routes change, bridges get washed away, some roads no longer accessible. So yeah, you can come unstuck, and if you're traveling with a young family or traveling with a group who are inexperienced, you're gonna spend some time bogged in a river somewhere or into an area you shouldn't be. In this park in the last 2 years, I've had 2 or 3 different groups of people that have been lost. Just no one knew they were coming in. So
Now, people listening to this might say, well, it's too difficult. I'll go to Botswana. I'll go to Namibia. That are far easier destinations, but in many respects not as appealing. Why should I come to Zimbabwe and not Botswana, or Namibia?
It's a good question, and it's one I've pondered, because the exposure is at risk of creating a Botswana out of Zimbabwe. But I think, and I use that in the context of campsites that are full all the time, hard to get in, and then all the other sort of issues that come with intensive overland use into campsites. But I think the nice thing about Matusudana, for example, is they're controlling that, they're regulating that, and they're going to have a number of people, and you're not going to be able to flood this campsite because it's detracting from the experience. So I think the isolation, the remoteness, the difficulty of reaching some of these destinations and the time frame keeps it wild. But I personally don't find Botswana that appealing. You might see good game, but you're gonna see equally good game in some of Zimbabwe's parks. But there's a price to pay for every experience, and the price to pay here is tough roads, long drives, remote areas, a degree of competence and self-supported ability, and then it's waiting for you. So for me, yeah, the purists, I'd say if you look at Southern Africa on an overlanding scale, out of South Africa up into Namibia, Botswana, it's the first touchdown into overlanding in Africa. It's well supported, the roads are well maintained, there's good public knowledge, and it's even the South African market, they prefer Botswana and Namibia. We are a lot more expensive, so I mean we are on a par with Botswana in some regards, a bit more expensive. That's just the economies of Zimbabwe, I guess. But I think it's a place you come to on your 3rd, 4th trip. If you've done Botswana, you've done Namibia, you've built some confidence, you should be traveling in a minimum of 2 vehicles. You can travel on your own, but then you really have to know that you're confident in your abilities, and you can deal with it, whatever comes your way. But it's remote, it's really, I won't say undiscovered, but you can have these purest experiences where you're not sharing campsites with other people. You're having these amazing settings and scenery that you can enjoy, and you almost feel like you're switching off. I mean, we've been here for 4 days, and I remember at one point you were saying 4 days is a long time in one place, but I think the nature of the trip, it's served its purpose as a halfway point between one chapter and now you're going into another chapter, totally different, some really rough roads for the first day, and then another tough road into Wangi, but it's provided what it intended. Beautiful setting, some amazing content, relax, disconnect, recharge. And a lot of people come here and don't want to leave, stay for 2 days, but they're here for a week and they recharge and they carry on. And Matusudana is a good connection between the Lower Zambezi and then Wangi and Victoria Falls.
Your specific offering to self-driver, what do you do? Talk about yourself.
So I run a company called 16 Degrees South, and we built these very immersive, authentic mobile safari experiences, and that was formed on the premise of the sort of trajectory towards very commercialized, almost hotel type lodge experiences where you're part of a big group and you kind of get shuffled around through a safari experience. And our philosophy was go back to the basics of immersive, feet in the sand, around a campfire, everything on your terms, understand what our guests want, and then build a very personalized safari experience. But in order to do that, you've got to really understand your group, and you can't mix them with other people because then you get conflicting interests and requirements, first timers versus seasoned safari goers. But we essentially take a very light footprint, 2 Hiluxes, 2 trailers, and we go in and build a camp for maximum of 8 people. And Matusudana is our home base. We have a concession in Matusudana, But we will do minor pools, we'll do Chiserera, we'll do Wangi, Conresort. We filter all our own water out of a water point at the site, so we're not carrying in bottles, plastic, and because we have a discovery call, we're also catering for each guest's specific needs. So we don't have to carry a 7-ton truck worth of different types of drinks and food. Everything's tailored to that specific guest requirement. So it allows us to position ourselves as ultra bespoke and very unique in how we deliver the safari experience.
Tell me about Africa Parks.
African Parks is a African-wide philanthropic entity that essentially takes on mismanaged or financially bankrupt wilderness areas and secures them for the long-term safeguarding of the biodiversity or the species that inhabit that area. So I think they have over 25 parks across the continent. Matusadana is their first foray into Zimbabwe. They're based in Johannesburg. They have a very large international donor base, and they've signed a PPP with Zimparks from Zimbabwe. So it's a co-managed operational agreement, and it's under the umbrella or the vehicle of the Matusadana Conservation Trust. And they're responsible for the day-to-day upkeep of the park, biodiversity restoration, law enforcement, community support in the areas adjacent to Matusadana, and ultimately allowing experiences like the one we're having to come back as an option for visitors. So yeah, it's very exciting. As a stakeholder in the park and an operator, we've got rhino coming back next year. So rhino have been locally extinct in Matusadana since 2013, I believe the last one was seen. But in the late 80s and 90s, it was a bastion of rhino. They assume over 150 rhino were living in this park prior to the poaching pandemic. So it's very exciting. They're looking at wild dog, they're looking at cheetah, they're looking at sable, roan, and then also just ecologically understanding how the park works, its relationship with the lake, a man-made phenomenon in an area that never used to adapt. So we've got a lot of interactions that were perhaps not fully understood from an ecological perspective. The role of termites in the ecosystem, the role of your mega grazers, and the balance and imbalance that can exist if it's not monitored and understood. So I'd say it's a very holistic management plan that African Parks have brought in. There's a fantastic team on the ground, great law enforcement, and really well managed and headed up by Mike Pelham. And it's a great flag for Zimbabwe and for Southern Africa and for conservation in general.
The elephant passed you while you were saying that an elephant was in the background walking past.
Stunning. It's Matusadana for you.
Had elephants the whole time.
Whole time.
Wandering in and okay. That's fantastic. So, anything else you specifically wanted to add to the show?
No, I think it's good if there's. I think the nice way of how your content goes out is you don't over push things. It's like that's what's there, and then people can, as long as they hear the name, they see the logo, they can do their own research. It's not expecting you to push people. It's like, this is what we had. That's my experience with these guys. If you want to talk to them, there's Graham.
Yeah.
So okay. I never wanted to sort of use it as a push this, push that. That's who I am. Take it or leave it. Yeah. My experience and my reputation in these spheres speaks for itself. I'll give you an incredible experience. It will be high value and it'll be to a good standard, excellent standard, and leave it to you. So happy, thank you.